Hey ladies and gents, it's Zemback, and we are doing essentially kind of a shipbuilding 101 with Avorion. If you've watched some other videos, I did kind of a quick starter video just to help people out when they're starting the game, how you start out with a probe, you mine some iron, and you build a ship. I didn't really go into the whole shipbuilding process and explain exactly what you needed to do. And I'm learning yet at this game. You know, I'm quite a ways into the game so far, and I've made a lot of mistakes. I've learned from my mistakes, and and I'm trying to pass on what I've learned to you guys if you're started playing Avorion. So we're going to start out with a basic shipbuilding 101 iron ships. Iron is the first material you'll find in Avorion. Now you're going to start out, and I saw in another video, you start out in the galaxy map, and this is the galaxy map. You zoom out, here's your galaxy. It's fucking huge, right? And you're going to start out, I'm currently down in this area, but you originally start out way up here on the edge of the map. And this is actually my spawn point right here. Once you spawn there, and you watch another video, you spawn into a probe, and you start mining asteroids for iron and whatnot. And about the point where you're going to get about at least a minimum of 4,000 to 5,000 iron, you're going to start looking to build a ship. And once you build the ship, then you can start to explore the galaxy. And the first material you're going to find is going to be iron. As you continue down toward the center of the galaxy, you will find better materials. You start out with Avorion, and then about in here somewhere, out here you find Avorion with a little bit of titanium mixed in, or not Avorion, iron with a little bit of titanium mixed in. And as you continue down in here, you're going to start finding a lot more titanium. Then you find nanonite, and you just keep working your way down here, and the material just gets better and better and better until you get to the edge of the rift, which is this rift right here you see along the edge that you cannot get to the center. Inside the center here is where the Avorion is, the material that you want to build most of your ships out of, and hence what the name is of the game, Avorion. So when you first start out, like I said, you're going to be starting out in the iron region. You're going to find some titanium, but most likely your very first ship, unless you get lucky right off the bat and find a bunch of titanium. And we're going to go into the titanium in a different video, but this is just going to be pure iron building, or iron ship building. So when you first, in the first video that I did, you start out with essentially a small probe, which is this guy right here. There he is. You can jump into your probe anytime. This is my essentially right here, one of my destroyers. This is a little bit late game. Just kind of give you an idea of what it looks like, and we'll go over some of the things in that ship to explain some of the things you need to do in your iron ship. But right now we're just going to start out with a fresh build iron ship. So you got your iron collected, you get your 4,000 or 5,000 iron, and you start out with a game with 10,000 credits, right? And you're going to get ready to build your first ship. So you're going to go over here to the flag. It says found ship. You're going to hit the found ship, and you need 500 iron to start your ship. You're going to enter a name here. We're just going to do Z3M. We're going to call it the Zem. Scratch that. We're going to go, let's call it the Atlanta. Yeah, I like that. Kind of after the USS Atlanta type thing. And we're going to make an alliance ship because it's part of my fleet. We're going to be part of my fleet. And, so we'll go with the 500 iron, and we're going to, we got the name entered. You don't have to do an alliance thing if you're not into the alliances or created your own alliances. You can just do it as a free wall. This is your first ship, and it costs you 5,000 credits to make it an alliance, so you're not going to do it right off the bat. So we're just, like I said, doing the initial starter block. This is where you start building your empire. This is what I love about Avorion. You're building an empire essentially straight from a single block, right? Pretty crazy. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go into the build mode. So now after you founded a ship, you have to enter the build mode. Now the build mode is the big green arrow on the back to show you the direction of what the direction that you're going to go with the ship. This is going to be the front part of the ship over here, and this is the rear part of the ship. Put the engines back here, guys. But this is also the center of your ship, so this is essentially the center of gravity of your ship. And you're going to have to remember that center of the gravity when you're building your ship when it comes to thrust and counter thrust and side thrust and all that other kind of crazy shit. So the first thing we got to do, and like I said, we're working just with iron. So I got more than 10,000 credits. I got 427 million, but we're only going to do 10,000 credits. And you want to make sure you want to only use about 5,000 credits roughly. You have to pay the crew of the ship, and you want to make sure you have enough credits on hand to keep paying your ship until you make a few more credits. So you want to try to keep it a reasonable build. So hence, a lot of times the first ships you're going to build are mostly going to look like shoeboxes. Why? Because it's just, I mean, you can add the aesthetics later on, you know, fins and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, a square-shaped ship is going to work because, you know, you're going to spend less materials building it, you're going to spend less money building it, and it's still going to get the job done. So don't be bashful if your first ship looks, like I said before, it looks like a dick or it looks like a shoebox, because those are kind of the basic shapes that work the best when you're first starting out. You know, you're not adding fins, you're not adding all that kind of stuff to your ship. So we're going to run over kind of a quick here over through the different components that you get with irons. It changes as you move up. Titanium, you get different components. You get integrity field generators, you get titanium generators, you get energy containers. But with iron, you don't get any of that kind of stuff. This is just a basic building blocks. And when you start out, you're going to start out with, you have essentially what they call the iron hull, which is just a vanilla block. This is an armor, but you can build your ship out of it. Iron is a very heavy material, and compared to titanium and all the rest of it, fairly durable but high mass, and a little more difficult to control. It does not make really great armor unless you're using like rock armor, that kind of stuff. You have a iron engine block. You have an iron stone block. Iron engine is pretty self-explanatory. You put that on the ass end of your ship, it makes it go. Iron stone is kind of like an armor. I shouldn't say armor. It's a block, but it's made of iron stone, which means more stone than iron. But it is immune to electricity weapons, high durability, very high mass. So it's extremely heavy, but it's very durable, and it makes it immune to a lot of electricity weapons. This is something that you're not going to really use until you get later on in the game, which by the time you're going to be using different kind of material anyway. Iron cargo bay, unless when you first start out, you're not going to be doing a lot of raiding. You're not going to be doing like cargo hauling right away. You don't need to add the iron cargo bay until you get a little further in the game. And we're going to do other videos about that anyway. But for the most part, this is not really something that you need right off the bat. Iron crew quarters. This is one of your first blocks that you're really going to need. And this is going to be, you're going to build, you want to make it relatively small. So usually the first one I usually do it about the same size as the initial starter block. And what you see me doing here is I'm changing the block size by using the A, the W, the S, and the D keys. That lets me pick what side I want to extend and extend or make smaller. R lets me rotate the block, left, right, up, down. And you know, this is something you're just going to have to play with. A lot of these design features, you're just going to have to sit and play with. I mean, even myself, after playing so long, I just don't really dick with it a whole lot. But there is a whole bunch of different things you can do in the actual build part of it that you can build curves and all that kind of stuff by doing a lot. I'm just still kind of doing the basic thing. I haven't got into the creative where I sit there and design massive warships that look really, really cool. All right, so I'm just going to be building a straight-up warship or a straight-up ship to start out with the game. So I got my block that's about the same size as the existing core block. So we're going to put that up here. And you notice when I added that gives me a crew quarters of 4. Okay? If I add another block, that's going to give me, what the hell's going on here? quarters of 4. Really don't need that second block anyway. But, alright, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong direction here. Yeah, so if you don't like the block, you can actually click on it. You can either undo the undo, or you can just click on the block and then push delete, and it takes a block away. However, we'll put that back on there, and it gives us, once again, a starter crew. When I was talking about earlier about the aesthetics of the ship, most of these ships are just going to start out with, when you first start out the game, it's going to be mostly just a shoebox. And like I said, you can work up to it as you work on it later on here. So, that is the iron crew quarters. The next one is called the ion thrusters. These are what you're going to use to keep your ship from going left and right, up and down, and that kind of stuff. You have your backwards thrust, your iron engines that push you forward, but you need thrusters on the left and the right to make the ship turn left and right, obviously. And same way with up and down and roll and all that kind of stuff. So these are what you're going to use. Directional thrusters are the same thing, but they only push one direction. These iron thrusters push usually in several different directions, and I'll show you when I do the build what I'm talking about. The iron gyro array, this is once again kind of more of a, not really an advanced thing. You can use these right off the bat, but they increases your rotational speed, and you're going to have to mess with this as the ships you build. You can add these blocks. It allows your ship to rotate faster. Same way with the iron inertia dampener. This is like a big brake, right? You add one of these onto your ship, and it decreases the braking power of your ship. Because over here you have a thrust, which is the one in the back, obviously your engine, and then you have a brake thrust. This is what you can use the inertia dampener for. It helps your brake thrust by a lot. I usually install these on ships because, you know, instead of crashing into shit, it's nice to be able to slow down. Iron framework. Now, this is kind of an important one, mostly because I use this a lot when I'm building my first ships, because I'm not sure, you're going to make redesigns on these ships constantly, right? And what I'm doing here is, I'm going to add a little bit here. What it is it kind of fleshes out your ship without adding a bunch of weight. I mean, I could do the same thing with the iron block hull. I could add that, but this is going to weigh more than the metal iron framework. So I don't typically use those. I like to use the iron framework because it weighs less. And what I'm doing here is creating space. I mean, I could just create one small ship and then fly around with it, but every time I want to redo something with it, it forces me to add on to it. I have to take things off, take it off. I essentially use the iron hull as, iron framework as just to fill out the ship. And I'll show you as I do this a little bit further on here. What this does is allows me to later on change out parts and make my ship better. And here I'm just going to fill out a real simple, kind of a 9x9 square ship starting, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, since we talked about some of this other stuff here, we're going to add the engine next. And we're just going to grab an engine here. And we're going to go to the back of the ship. And we're going to plop that bugger right there. So now you see there's a cost, 223 credits and 100 iron. And of course, like I said, you want to be balancing your credits because you only got so many credits. You're going to have more iron than you're going to have credits. So you want to be watching that, how much credits you're spending, because you want to kind of keep that relatively close to right around that 5,000 mark, because you're going to have to pay for shit as you go along the game, especially with the salaries of your crew members. So we've added the engine to the ship. So now we have forward thrust, which is 44 meters a second. So we're going to escape out of this, and we're just going to do a little test flight. See, I can't turn left and right because I have no directional thrusters. However, I can go forward. And it's not really showing me a whole lot of thrust. There we go. So you can see that I can move forward, but I can't go left and right. And this is, of course, where, the thrusters come into play. So we got the forward thrust, and of course you can see here 44 meters a second forward thrust. And that's just essentially based on the size of the engine. You can, of course, add more engine blocks. And now we're up to 52, and we can add another engine block and make it 67. So now I have 67 meters per second thrust on this ship here. I have 0 brake thrust, so that means as I'm moving forward, I have nothing to slow me down. This is where, of course, these inertia dampeners come in, or you can, of course, put thrusters in the front, the directional thrusters right here, and put them in the front, and that's going to give you the braking right there. You see how it starts to brake right there? You can do it that way too. I typically use the inertia dampeners. They're a little bit, they use up less material, I guess, and they do a better job for the most part. So they, like I said, just a big brake. And we're just going to put him in there. We're going to make him pretty thin. He doesn't have to be real big. He does a pretty good job of it. So we're going to put it on, and as soon as we hit it, see how fast the inertia dampeners slow the ship down compared to the thrusters. You can see over here I have 64 meters per second thrust, and I have 73 brake thrust. Now, this is probably going to change as you put crew on here. These numbers are going to go up because the better crew you get, the faster you go. So I'm going to add some framework here. So later on, when my ship gets bigger, I can add more of these inertia thrusters in here. What I do is to simply leave the bottom of the ship open, and I'm able to reach up in here and delete one of those, and then I can slide a component in there, like another dampener. I can slide that in there to take the spot of the framework. So we're just going to add the framework back in there. So pretty much just a straightforward, square. 3 engines producing 74 meters per thrust, and I've got, with the inertial dampener, 74 meters per second brake thrust. So the next one is the iron dock. This has to do with stations. Does nothing to do with your first initial ship. Iron turn rotation. You can lock your turns into place if you want to use this. Most of the turns turn about 180 degrees. I usually don't ever use this at all. Iron flight recorder. This is kind of an interesting one. This is you install this, and you can make it any size. I usually make it pretty small. This is going to help you find your blown up shit when you do get killed. You're going to crash some ships. You're going to get blown up by pirates and stuff. This flight recorder shows you where that ship has been destroyed. So let's put him right here below the engine. That's going to tell us what part of the galaxy. So if I got blown up over here, there's going to be a little marker right here that tells me that's where the ship got blown up at. That kind of, that's what it does. So next part is the iron assembly. This is, of course, only for hangars and factories. Improves the production speed, that kind of stuff. Once again, nothing to do with building the ship. The next part is, of course, the iron torpedo launcher. Early in the game, you're not going to be using torpedo launcher, especially in the iron. We'll go into that when we get to the titanium. But the iron torpedo launchers, you're not going to be using them. You're going to be most for the most part trying to upgrade your ships into the titanium. So there's no really point in putting it on there. Since you're not going to spend the money on them, most of the torpedoes cost between 10 and 20,000 credits of torpedo. The low-end ones do. So you're not going to spend a bunch of money on torpedoes when you're going to be doing it, using it other things like other parts of your ship. Same with the iron torpedo storage. Once again, not really useful this early in the game. Iron solar panels, you can put them on your ship. It does collect small amounts of energy. However, it doesn't do a whole lot of good because you're producing 500 megawatts and you're only using 212 right now, so you don't really need more generation of power. You're going to wait till you get to the next group of materials where you're going to get actual titanium generators. So using these solar panels are not going to do you a whole lot of good. These are useful more along the lines when you start building stations than actually shipbuilding. Iron light. So you're going to get a bunch of these odd blocks in here. So these are iron glow lights. You can add them. They're more of a aesthetic blocks. You can add them, of course, to make your ship glow on the side and little light bars, or you can add them to your bridge, that kind of thing. There's not a whole lot that you really want to do. Iron blank hull, same thing as this one. The iron hull, this one has windows, this one doesn't. They're not armor. That's just about it. I don't ever think I've ever used iron blank hulls, or any blank hulls, even the titanium ones, the triniums, none of that kind of stuff, unless I'm building, like, say, a station or whatever, and I want to make large arms or extensions where I'm adding solar panels. That's where I use that stuff. I don't usually use it on ships. Typically I use iron frameworks and armor. That's about all I use on my ships. Of course, the interior stuff like crew quarters, cargo bays, and that stuff are a different kind of block. Iron edge, once again, just a vanilla block. However, it is shaped like a triangle, and this is where you're going to start to get into some of the designing of your ship. Where I can start flipping it. If I decide to put it on the front of the ship, using the AWSD key, I can make it stick out further. I can make it thicker. I can make it wider. This is kind of where you start building the shape of your ship, other than making it look like just a shoebox, right? However, there is no real armor value to it, so they're just more of a, once again, use it for building on ships or stations and that kind of stuff. Or if you don't want to make it completely out of iron armor, and you want to extend out wings and stuff like that, you can use these kind of blocks. Same way with Iron Corner 1, Iron Corner 2, and Iron Corner 3. These are all odd different shaped blocks that you can use. This one looks a little bit different. You can see by the way how that looks. Doesn't do a whole lot for the ship other than add mass. Or I shouldn't say mass, adds weight to the ship, which it makes it a little bit harder for you to control. Iron armor, however, that's a different story. You want to have a little bit of armor when you first start out with your ship. Oops. And I usually put a pretty good sized chunk here on the top. And whoops, see if we can get this, even after this much time, I still can't get this stupid thing right. Alright, and we're just going to extend that out until it covers my top part of my ship. And like I said, don't worry about making the aesthetically pleasing part of it until you get a little bit later in the game. So, got to be a nice big flat chunk of armor on the top of the ship. And yeah, that's what the armor does. So this is a big chunk of armor. Will protect you against a lot of the early stuff you run into. That kind of stuff. So that's the armor flat block. Now you got the iron armor edge. This of course is, like I said, looks like it's a triangle, and you can adjust it to whatever you want and how you want it to look. Let's see here. Let's make it smaller. And I'm going to rotate it around. There we go. Yeah, so we're going to stick a chunk of that right in the front. Because most of the damage you're going to take in this game is going to be from the front. They're going to be shooting at this, and they're going to be shooting at this. They're not really going to be shooting at the bottom of the ship, unless, of course, you give the bottom of the ship to the enemy. Let's rotate that around. Oops, wrong rotation. And we're just going to stick that up in here. Oops. Yeah, we'll stick in there. We'll do a little bit of something there a little bit later. We can fill this in with something. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, we're just building this first initial ship. So that's what the iron blocks. These are, like I said, armor. These actually have an armor value. High mass, stops railgun projectiles, that kind of stuff. Better than the plain iron cornered vanilla blocks. And there's a couple, like I said, they all look a little bit different. This is the Iron Corner Armor 3. And if you dick around with it, you'll see that it does, it's got a different shape to it, which you can use for later building on of your ship. The next ones are simply just, like I said, iron glow. They just glow. There's nothing to them. There's different shapes of them. Here's the triangle shape. Yeah, they're just an aesthetic. Same way with the iron glass. It looks like glass. You can't see. You can see through it. Same way with iron edge. Yeah, see, just a see-through block. Now we get down to the iron stone. This is what I was talking about here with iron stone up here. These are kind of like, from what I can understand, essentially stone with iron in it. So they do have they're immune to electricity weapons. So there is some armor value used to these. You can, of course, put them in your ships, or you don't have to. I prefer the iron armor over the iron stone. There is some quests that these might come in handy when you run into ships that have electricity weapons. You can coach your ship in these kind of armor. It does help. Iron hologram. These are simply non-existent blocks. They're just literally a hologram. They add they add to the ship, but they have no actual armor value. When they get shot, things just pass right through them. So yeah, they're literally a hologram. Same way with the iron-rich stone. Once again, kind of a pretty color, but it's just all it is stone with some iron in it. It does have not much value at all. I've never actually used this for anything. So yeah, so that's the initial use of blocks. What you can do with this iron, these iron blocks. So now that I've covered all this stuff, we're just going to get back to building on this vessel. So right now, I just have thrust. I can go forward, can go left and right. And this is, of course, where the directional thrust comes in. You can see how I had the inertial dampener in there. It helps with my slowing down. So now I'm going to need a little bit of stuff on the side. And this are not on the side to actually be able to turn the ship. And this is where the directional thrusters come in. And we're just going to put a couple. Yeah, let's put one. We're just going to add them along the edge. You can actually cover these with armor, and they still work. So if I put one here, and I go back to get a piece of, say, iron block, and put that on here, it'll still work through that iron block. And you'll see what I'm talking about here. See, now I can turn my ship. I do have the thruster. I don't have a very big thruster, that's why it's not turning very well. But you can see that it can turn even through the block. Alright, back to the ship here. So we're going to drop that off. I really don't need it there. So I'm going to put my thrusters, some thrusters along this edge here to allow this thing to turn fairly well, because you're going to have to work with the drift and everything. I usually use the multi-directional thruster multi-directional over the directional, because the one directional only gives you one direction. This gives you 4 different directions. And more of a preference thing too. I think there's probably some advantage to it. Somebody that knows more about it than I do. But we're going to put that one in there. We're actually going to turn the x-axis on. This lets you put this on both sides. You're going to mirror. The other side's going to get mirrored. See how it mirrors? That way you don't have to keep doing this over and over again. So we'll drop that in there. And, oops, it didn't do it on the other side for some reason. I might have to push it back a little bit. Here we go. Oh, apparently that's not working. Oh, whatever. But that's how there's X, Y, there's X, Y, and Z, so you can do it on both sides. So let's see if I can do it without that. Yeah, see, it worked right there. Don't know what the fuck's going on. But we're going to put these directional thrusters here, and we're going to put some back here. We're going to extend that one out a little bit so it covers that whole framework. There we go. And we're going to put it on that side. This is not armor. These don't take a hit real well. So you can leave them like that, assuming that you're not going to hit from the side, and you're going to just get hit from the top and the front. You can leave this, or you can plate it in armor. It's entirely up to you. So by adding those thrusters, now all of a sudden, ooh, look at that. Now my ship can turn fairly well. Of course, the farther away you put the directional thruster from the center of gravity of your ship, the more effective they are. So if I built some, say, example... so here's a pretty good example of using iron hull. If I decide that I'm gonna let's make this a little bit smaller, and we're just gonna extend that out a little ways. Oops, too far. And we'll put one there, and we'll put the other one on this side. Yeah, see now, and if we go back to iron directional, iron thruster, and we do XY on this one. See, that's how that XY is supposed to work. But since I put it out further, you can see now how much more thrust I have, because the further away from the center of gravity, the more thrust that thrust works on the ship. Obviously it's physics. Now, so kind of got a general build here. I've left the underside open, and I'll talk about that when I get back into the build mode. Now that I have this open, you can cover this if, of course, you want to. That's not a big deal. But I usually leave it open for a reason, because I can reach up in here and I go, you know what? Hey, I want to add a more crew space. I can reach up there, grab it, delete it, and now I can slide a crew slot up inside here, or generator, or anything like that. You can just add. You can knock this iron framework out and keep adding to your ship. A very simple, easy way of doing it instead of having to constantly remove iron plating and all that kind of stuff. So that's really about it. Like I said, you got to keep watching this over here. Thrust 15.6. You're going to see the hull 856. Shields are 0. We haven't got any material to make shields yet. And the number of blocks used and that kind of stuff. The volume, mass thrust, brake thrust, max velocity. Right now I can do 68 meters a second as fast as I can go. Left and right, up and down. There's these the rads. Radiuses, the rolls, 1.36 radius. Hyperspace cooldown is 29.4, and right now I have a hyperspace reach of 2.5 sectors and a radar reach of 14 sectors. And I only have system upgrades of 2 slots, and I'll explain that shortly. Processing power of 97. This is not going to change, of course, until we get into the actual computer part of it, which is going to be until we get to titanium, I believe. And then a crew quarters of 4. Right now I can put on armed turret slots of 1, unarmed turret slots of 2, and I'll show these guys what I'm talking about here. And I have 0 ohms, or 0 firepower of 0 omicron, because I don't have anything mounted. Generated power is 500 megawatts, and 284 is currently being used with a storable energy of 20 gigajoules. So with that said, right now I need the required engineer I need 2 engineers and a couple mechanics right now to fill out the crew. So, with that said, we got our first relatively basic iron ship built. Some armor on the front, some decent maneuverability, and some not so bad thrust. So, we're going to drop into the actual putting some turrets on this ship. Now, I don't. I use this is my actual one I play on. This is what I actually play on this Galaxy, so this of course is all my stuff from this game. However, I didn't want to go back and start over from scratch, chasing down more iron and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to use some basic. Let's see here. These are all Xanian. And I'll explain to me what all this stuff means here. What do we have here? Let's put a point. That's a laser one. So when you start out, you're going to get one. I believe you get 2 mining lasers and 2 armed turrets. So I'm just going to throw some of these out here. These are nanonites. I need the iron ones. Yeah, we'll just use that for now. And we'll use that one for now. So you're going to get those 4. You'll get 4 turns to choose from. However, with this small of a ship, and we're going to have to go up to the ship menu. And this is the ship menu. You're going to hit it. And this is going to explain a lot of things. So this ship menu gives you a general overview of your ship. Like I said, we got this over here, get this over here. However, this is also where you get to take your armed turrets and you can bind them to keys like the 1 key or the 2 key. This is also the crew, where you can change crews, add crews and that stuff. Right now I need 2 mechanics and 2 engineers. So I need 4 crew members right now to make this ship fully operational. And of course systems. Now systems, you get 2 of the slots. These slots, you get more slots for more system components. The bigger your ship gets, or the more processing power you produce. This is going to require, of course, producing some sort of computer, which you're not going to get till you get into later, more advanced materials. However, the bigger you make your ship, the more slots you get. What these slots do, They do all kinds of things, and most of the time you're going to get the white ones, some of the green ones, some of the blue ones when you first start out. You get them by essentially destroying shit. For example, if you wanted a deterrent one, you're going to have to destroy a warship. If you want one that does mining, you're going to have to destroy a mining ship. If you want one that does with the cargo or the trade, there's a trade one right here, you're going to have to blow up a cargo ship, right? So these components plug into your bottom of your ship, and they give you kind of all kinds of advantages here. For example, this one right here gives you a negative 5% cooldown on your hyperspace. This one over here gives you an increase in generated energy by 30%. This one over here lets you add one more extra armed turret to your ship, so you can plug that in up there. Whoops. Why isn't that working? Is that too far up? But I can put that one up there. That's why. Generated power. I don't have enough generated power to use those components, so we're going to have to pull those out of there. I would have to increase my power to use these components, but you get that general gist what I'm talking about. Use these components to increase acceleration. This one's over here to increase mining, to find highlights out nearby asteroids that have mining. So you're going to use these components. You're going to get them early on in the game when you destroy pirate ships, that kind of stuff. You're going to pick up these components to add to your ship. So yeah, with that said, like I said, this is just the component part here. This is the energy, showing you what you're using for energy. Life support's using flight assistance, thrusters, and of course engine. This over here, of course, has to do with the amount of energy that's being used. Pretty simple. There's a fighter one that you're going to have to worry about till you get into the fighter bays. Same way with the torpedoes. We'll talk about that over. And this is a co-op control. This has to do with being in an alliance. I can add a seat and somebody can play with me. They can control the turns on the ship while I fly it. Pretty simple. Okay, so with that said, then of course you can add in. I'm not even going to be sure if I'm going to be able to do these, because I'm not sure if they're going to be able to add up a bunch, use more energy than they need to. So there's my first. So you're going to, like I said, you're going to get a couple laser turns and a couple mining turns. And you're only going to be able to mount 3 right off the bat. So usually when you first start out, once you build your first ship, you're probably going to be mounting at least a couple laser turns to have to deal with some pirates. And we're going to talk about that in a different video, how to make some cash and how to do some of the combat. Same way with the iron mining, you're going to have a couple of those. And I actually can't mount this, but in the first part of the game, you're going to be able to mount 3 turns on here. So yeah, so there's our first general purpose iron ship, kind of giving you an idea of what all these little components do. And make sure you always, when you build these ships, that you're relatively close to a factory. This is 5 kilometers away. This is where you're going to pick up your crew. So I'm going to fly over here, and I'm looking for a dock. So the docks, they show here the docks, how far away they are. And I'm going to fly on over here. And this is, like I said, we got to be careful with how much money you spend, because you got to have enough money, of course, to pick up or pay a crew. So we're going to fly on over here, and we're going to pick a dock out. So you're going to look at the docks right here. So they show like little pieces sticking out. There's actually see the lights that roll out there? That's the direction that the dock's pointed. So that dock right there is pointed off into that direction here. So I'm going to go over here. He's at about half kilometer away. So we're going to pull on the other side over here. And you can really see that inertia dampener kick in. So you start getting close enough here, you're going to get what they call F to press to dock. So we're going to push F to dock, and we're going to hire a crew. So I need mechanics. So I'm going to look for a mechanic here. I don't have any mechanics. So we're just going to hire some random crew members. These guys you can put in a bunch of different slots. They're not trained for being a mechanic or an engineer, but they'll get you by. And that's all I'm doing right now in this video, is trying to get by. So we're going to hire him. And I need some more, I need a couple engineers. So we're going to hire one engineer, another engineer. So we got rid of the iron, and I need a gunner. So we're going to add a gunner, hire him. And see, now my ship is overpopulated. I don't have enough quarters. So I still need another, oops, I need more than one gunner, I guess. 3 gunners, and I need more mechanics. And we can change this. I don't have mechanics available. However, once I get into the ship over here, to the ship menu, I can go to the crew, and I can, of course, add, since I have 8 here, I can add to the mechanics. I'm going to add that from my crew members. These aren't trained mechanics. They're kind of untrained mechanics, so they don't do the best job of, you know, you want to get trained personnel as much as you can into these positions. So now I have the ship fully. So I needed 2, I got 3 engineers, I needed 5 gunners, I got 4 gunners, I got 5, and I still have 6 left over here. You're paying all on these guys. You can get rid of these guys if you don't want them. They're just going to be, what do you want to call it, a suck on your resources if you don't want to pay them. But I still have everything 100% crewed right now. In fact, I can probably get rid of that guy. Oops. Maybe I shouldn't have got rid of that guy. Anyway, we'll just go back in there and hire him back. Not doing a very good job of this, am I? So hire them back, so now we got it done. So, with that crew now, you can notice how much better the ship handles and how much faster it is. You know, before I was only doing just a little bit over 100 meters a second. Now that I have a good crew in here, I'm doing over 500 meters. 440 meters is what I can do. Pretty impressive here. So now you saw this come up earlier. It says your ship is overpopulated and I don't have enough quarters. And this is what I was talking about earlier with in the build part of it. Since I blocked off, I took that block out of there using the framework. I could take 2 blocks out if I want. Take that one out too. This is where that point where I said about being able to expand. This is how you do it. So I got that, and oops. So I can put a bigger crew quarters in there. Kind of tricky doing it from the bottom, but you can see what I'm talking about here. So, oops. There we go. Almost there. So, fill that in. And you notice now that it's gone, I have enough crew quarters. And I still have another slot here, but I can add more stuff, whether crew quarters, cargo spaces, or any of that kind of stuff. So, here is the laser gunfire. Not really the best, but hey, we're just building the first one. So, away we go. And like I said, with the regular, now that I have a crew on it, I can do about 440. And if I use the boost, which is the space key, I can get up over just 1760 meters a second. So yeah, the boost is pretty nice. I didn't even know that could do that until I probably built my second ship. So once we got that all straightened out here, we're also going to look at the jump part of it here. With the low end jump, I have no system components that let me get to jump, and I have no computer cores. So you're only going to start out with a very short jump. So you can only jump about 2 sectors here, and you're going to enter coordinates. Now I can jump to that coordinates. As you get better components, you're going to get a much bigger jump range. Same way when you add computers, you're going to get a much bigger jump range. Pretty easy. So, with that said, thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to go jump back in my other ship now, and back into the my cruiser over here, and I'm going to go fuck up some pirates. So thanks for watching. Hopefully this kind of answered some questions about the first initial parts of the iron builds. We're going to go through all the materials, kind of give you an idea what they all do, and that kind of stuff. So once again, thanks for watching, guys. You guys have a good night.